Hey guys, it's Rogowy here, and today we are doing another tutorial. And today we're talking about brushes, and we're talking about all the fun things and interesting things you can do with brushes in Photoshop. You'll notice in the tutorial folder we got a couple different files. We got high key model, iceberg, man smoking, penguin baby, and SS eyelashes. All right, and we're gonna start by looking at penguin baby. So open up Penguin Baby with Photoshop. Now, there's all sorts of cool things you can do with brushes in Photoshop, and you can have a lot of fun with this, and sometimes it can really enhance your photos, but generally you could just, find some creative uses for it. Before we get started, I just want to say that I don't take any credit for the photos being used in this tutorial, simply for educational purposes only. And that's important to mention. All right, so we're going to start with this image of a baby penguin. It's very random, I know. Don't ask me why I picked a baby penguin. It's just what I came up with here. And we're going to start by converting him to grayscale or black and white. We're going to go to Image, Mode, Grayscale. And we're just going to discard the color. And that gives us a good indication of what our brush is going to look like. In this case, we're using an image as a brush. All right, we're going to use the eraser tool with a very soft, maybe about, let's go about 40%. And we're just going to erase, whoops, click this black and white default button and let's just erase around the penguin, and I'll explain why I'm doing this after. We want the penguin to be the focus of our brush, obviously, and there we go. We have got it erased all the way around, and now we're ready to turn penguin here into a brush. So, how do we do that? With this penguin on screen, and this could be any picture, it could be a selfie of yourself, obviously, or a friend, or whatever. You can have all sorts of fun with this. We're going to take your image, you're going to go to Edit, Define Brush Preset. It's going to ask you what you want to call the brush, and I'm going to just take the .jpeg ending off, and I'm going to call it Penguin Baby. You'll notice that the size comes up as 815 in this little preview window, and I'm going to explain how it gets that size or where that comes from in a second. So Penguin Baby, hit OK. Alrighty, and now about that size, if I go to image size, okay, you'll notice that the size is 825. All right, it gets the height of the brush based on where your image starts. So if it doesn't find anything in the white area, like as you may have noticed, we erased that, it found pixels of information at 815, which gave it the default size for the brush. And we're going to hit OK. We can actually close this, and you don't have to save. Now you might be saying, what was the point of that? Why do we do that? Open up the image called iceberg now, and press Command 0 so we can see the whole image. This is probably where a penguin would live, I think. I don't know. And so we're going to go to our brush tool, and we're just going to go to our brush options up at the top left there. And you'll notice in our brush options now, at the very end, we've got a little penguin. There he is. Click that. Now the cool thing about this is this will behave just like any other brush. So click up here to hide that. And you'll notice we can use the bracket keys next to the P key to make it larger or smaller. And I've got it set to black right now. If I click, I paint a penguin. I can make a smaller penguin. I can make an even smaller penguin. I can make a tiny, tiny penguin. They're getting bigger as we go. All right. And I can even go in here and change the color, as you can see. And I can add all sorts of different penguins to my scene very quickly and easily, and each one of these is referencing the original penguin that we created. This makes no sense, by the way, because if they were all baby penguins, they'd all be the same height. But we've got a couple mutations in here, a couple of giants. All right, so you can see that you can very quickly make an army of penguins based on that first brush, that first image we made. You can also click and drag, and you can paint with your penguin. I don't know why anybody would want to do that, but you can have some fun with your image, making millions of penguins in this case. Or it could be a picture of your face, and you could paint your face a million times if you wanted to do that. Let's go to save this, save as, put it to your desktop and save it. And if it asks you about JPEG options, just hit OK. All right, let's close that off. So that is creating a brush. Next, we're going to look at what if we have a brush that's already made. How do we get it into Photoshop? Let's open up High Key Model with Photoshop. And we got this picture of this lovely model. And we still have the penguin selected, so if I was to use my brush right now, I'd draw a penguin on her face. Kind of weird. If you don't see the little preview of your brush showing up, if you don't see that little outline like what I've got there, it's probably because your cap locks key is on. And you'll notice if I turn the cap locks key on, it turns into a crosshair. If I turn it off, I get the outline of the penguin. So first things first here, we're going to add a new layer. We're going to click. And this time we're going to load a custom brush set that's already been created for us. And here's how we do that. Make sure the brush tool is selected. Go up to the top where you've got your brush options, so this shows up. And click the little gear or options in the corner. And choose Load Brushes. Now, from our Wednesday tutorial folder, let me just find it here. We are going to choose SS Eyelashes. That's the one we're looking at here, and I'm going to hit Open. You'll notice now at the bottom of our brush library, we now have all these eyelashes that have been added. So this was an eyelash brush that I added here. And I'm going to pick some crazy eyelashes here. It doesn't really matter which ones, but I'm going to pick these ones because they look crazy. I'm going to make sure my foreground color is black. And I can do that just by clicking the default button there, the default black and white. Or I can go in and choose a color. And now I'm going to use the brackets to shrink the eyelash down so that it kind of matches the length of her existing eyelash. So I'm just going to click. And there's those crazy eyelashes that are added. Now I'm going to go back into my brushes. I'm going to choose the one for the other eye, the right one. And before I click, I'm going to make a new layer. I'll explain why in a second. I'm going to shrink it down on this new layer, and I'm going to click once again for the other eye. Now, why did I make a new layer for that other eyelash? Well, if I had made it on the same layer, I couldn't position them at the same time. I'm going to go to layer 1, and I'm going to press Command T, and now I can move just that single eyelash around. If they were both on the same layer, and I press Command T, I would be forced to transform them both at the same time, which would screw me up. Now, you should know this, but if you don't, if you need to rotate your eyelash into position, you just go outside of the bounding box, outside the corner. You'll notice that my cursor changes to a two-sided arrow, and I can rotate that eyelash perfectly into position. Now I can go on my other layer, Command T once again. I can shrink that down so that it fits nicely. Again, trying to match it to her existing eyelashes as closely as possible. It's probably not going to fit perfectly, but that's okay. And I hit enter or return once I'm happy with that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down the opacity of the layer just a little bit so that those eyelashes are a little more see-through, a little more realistic, about 75%. And for purposes of keeping my layers looking clean, I'm going to merge these two layers. And the way you do that is you hold shift so that both those layers with each eyelash, they're both selected, and you go to the little pull down at the top right of your layers palette and you choose merge layers. And what that does is it takes both of those layers and puts them down onto the same layer. This just helps with organization. I would even go as far as renaming the layer and getting in the habit of that and calling them eyelashes top. Just like that. Oops, it'd be, it'd be good if I can spell eyelashes top. There we go. Now we're going to do the bottom eyelashes. We're going to make a new layer. And I'm going to go through this pretty quick because we just did this. I'm going to look for bottom lashes. And I can see some interesting ones here. Let's go with these ones, I guess. Okay. And I'm going to shrink it down once again for that eye. Click. Make another layer. Find the one for the right eye. Shrink it down for that eye. And click. Ooh, it looks so weird with hair down. Anyways, now I can press Command T and I can move it into position. I could shrink it or adjust it as I see fit. All right, just getting it into position here. And hit enter when you got it in place. Let's go to the other layer. Command T. Shrinking it down, getting it into position. Now lower lashes don't start till about there. If you start them early, it looks really weird. And you can have all sorts of fun with hair, and you can give her a unibrow if you wanted to. And let's pull down the opacity a bit again, just so that looks a little more natural. I'm going down to about 70% here. And when I press Command 0, when I press Command 0, now you can see what we've done with the brushes in this case. If I turn off those layers, how she looked before and how she looked after, I honestly don't know if that's an improvement or not, but you can see at least how brushes can be somewhat useful in adding interesting effects to our images. All right, now, where do all these interesting and creative brushes come from? Well, let's save this image and then let's look at where I got a couple resources where I get brushes from. So let's go File, Save As. I'm going to put this to the desktop, high key model, save, and replace. In this case, I don't know, I guess I was working on it before. And let's close this image. We're going to go to our browser. In this case, I'm using Google Chrome. It doesn't really matter which browser you use. And we're going to go to, whoops, had a couple things open there. We're going to go to www.brushking, that's BRUSHKING.EU. brushking.eu and hit enter. Now BrushKing is a fantastic website for downloading Photoshop brushes. You can pretty much find anything you can think of. In this case, we're going to search in the top right here for smoke. And let's hit enter. You notice that for smoke, we get all sorts of different brushes. All right, before I download the brush, or actually let's download the brush and then we'll talk about the site a little bit. Click this one here, Smoke Brushes, if you can find it. Otherwise, find one similar. And then click the download button. and it should be downloading. All right. Now before we go and look at what we just downloaded, you'll notice that on this website we have all sorts of different brushes that you can download, all sorts of really neat effects that can really enhance your photographs in all sorts of different ways. A lot of these, just experimenting and seeing what you can do with them. I've seen some people do some amazing things just with brushes alone. All right, so anyways, that's brushking.eu. I suggest you bookmark it. It's a very useful site. Let's put our browser down or close it. It's up to you. And we're going to go to the folder that that image just downloaded to. And so go to your hard drive of your computer, go to Downloads, find the brush called 509 Smoke Brushes Set. That's the one that it was on my computer. All right. And so that downloaded. Inside there, and I'm just going to move it off my desktop because I know that that's where it is on my computer because I had done this earlier. Inside that folder, 509 Smoke Brushes Set, you're going to see a folder called smoke.abr. Now remember what I said earlier, the ABR ending means that it is a brush file. And so we can move that out of the downloads onto our desktop, just like that. All right, now what we could do is the exact same thing as what we did with our model photo. This time we're going to open up an image called mansmoking.jpg. Open that up. And you're going to get this photo. Now, in no way do I condone smoking, but here's a perfect candidate for a brush to enhance or to add a little bit more effect to this shot. We're going to add a new layer. And we're going to go to our brush, and we're going to pull down our brush options like before. We're going to go to the corner here, and we're going to say Load Brushes. And on our desktop, we're going to find smoke.abr and hit Open. Now in this case here, we get all these different smoke brushes. And I'm going to look for one to add a bit of smoke coming off of his cigarette here. Now make sure you made a new layer, otherwise you won't be able to undo it or you won't be able to play around with it after. So I'm going to go with this one here. That looks interesting. And I'm going to set my brush to white. Now I could just do that by swapping the colors by using these two arrows, or I can go and actually pick white from the color picker and do it that way. Then using the brackets, I'm going to shrink it down. I'm going to click to add the smoke to the cigarette. As you can see, if you get it lined up perfectly, it looks very natural, very interesting. And we can pull down the opacity a bit so that it's not so fake looking. Now, using the Move tool, the first tool in your palette, you can move the smoke around so it lines up with the end of the cigarette in this case as closely as possible. You can press Command T, you can, change the way that smoke looks. You can transform it. If you don't like the color of it, you can always delete that layer and make a new one. Choose the same one. Maybe go with, if you think that, smoke is maybe more of a yellowy color or maybe even a bluish color. Again, you can experiment with this and you can try different things. Lower your opacity, like I said. And you can make all sorts of neat effects just by using brushes. Like I said, very, very useful. Again, mostly for effects, but you can get some very realistic looking images where people would never know that you added something to it, just because if you think about it, the brush itself is based off of a real photograph. All right, so whoever was creating this smoke brush would have taken photos of smoke, probably on a black background, and then inverted their colors or isolated the smoke so that it was, you know, on its own, and then created a brush out of it based off of those high quality photos of the smoke. So the result is that you get a very realistic looking result because it's based on a real image. All right, so once you're happy with that result, I suggest you save that. Go save as or save and go to your desktop. Call it Man Smoking if you want. Save and hit OK. So what did we look at today? We looked at how to create our own custom brushes. We looked at how to load preset or pre-created brushes. And we also looked at brushking.eu, which is a great resource for downloading brush libraries, again, for any sort of effect that you're trying to create. I recommend you kind of experiment with this, see what you can do, and have some fun with it. And until next time, I hope you guys take some interesting photos. See you next time.